Hi Scott, thanks for having me here.
Thank you.
You just had a talk at New York No-Go, and you talked about the current state and future trends in retail.
Yep.
What were the key takeaways?
Sure, so you can't talk about retail without talking about Amazon, and now controlling $1 and $2 online, just threaten to go into categories, and you see the category experience tremendous disruption. They announced they're acquiring a grocer. The entire industry sheds value. They announced they're going into healthcare. The healthcare industry sheds value. So first and foremost, the dominance of Amazon is a big topic. There are some companies counterpunching, Walmart with click and collect, using stores as warehouses. Tremendous unlocks from fast fashion, trying to create a sense of scarcity. Also an investment in organic intelligence. While everyone's investing in artificial intelligence, a lot of the retailers who have been successful are investing in their employees. Starbucks being the best example, who will now spend more money on healthcare than they spend on coffee beans. Sephora with their cast members. Best Buy with their blue shirts. Home Depot with their golden aprons. So people no longer go to stores for products, they go for people. So your ability to attract and retain the best employees is key. Also, we talked about this Riddlin retail, these pop-up shops, creating a sense of scarcity, that the product won't be there, because just competing on price, with price transparency now, unless you have the scale of an Amazon or a Walmart, that's a recipe for disaster. And then finally, redefining convenience. Amazon has taught consumers to believe that convenience equates to speed, but getting home to find out that a yellow sticky saying you weren't here when we delivered isn't convenient. So figuring out a way to get people products seamlessly when they're home, or maybe on their way to work or on their way home from work, is probably more convenient. And I think a lot of retailers are figuring out how to do that. So it's an exciting time. Retail has had a bit of a comeback the last 12 months. You have a lot of retail stocks are up, consumer economy is strong. So there's a lot of silver linings right now, outside of the Amazon cloud, if you will.
You also talked a little bit about Amazon kind of moving away from the traditional retail model and rather becoming a media company. Mm-hmm. And there's some people in the market predicting at some point of time Google's ad revenues might catch up with, that Amazon's ad revenues might catch up with Google.
Yeah.
How big do you see the Amazon ad business growing?
So Morgan Stanley predicted that Amazon Media Group, their media group, would be $4.5 billion in revenue this year. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be more like 10 or 12 billion. So to put that in context, Amazon Media Group is going to be a bigger business than Instagram. And if current trends hold, in 3 years you might see Amazon becoming one of perhaps the third largest media company in the world, behind Google and Facebook. So will it challenge Google or Facebook in terms of raw size in the near future? No. But could it start to eat into some of their growth? For the first time, that looks like a very real possibility. And it also lends itself to the notion that we talk about the four, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, but if we were going to talk about the one, it would be Amazon. Amazon seems to be winning wherever they're bumping up against anybody else, including Google and Facebook. We don't think of them as a media company, but to your point, in 2 or 3 years, they may be the third biggest media company in the world.
If you were a brand selling through Amazon or selling to Amazon, getting a product on the platform, would you consider the latest push in advertising a long-term opportunity for yourself, or is it rather a threat?
It's almost something you have to do, because just as offline retailers and grocers were good at extracting additional rents by making you pay extra for end caps or to have your product placed at eye level, Amazon has now figured out that they can monetize their search. And if you want to come up in their search rankings, if you want to increase your sales on Amazon, which investors want to see you grow in the fastest growing channel, Amazon, they have a great idea: advertise. And this is a great short-term pop, but the question is, over time, does it just erode the margins of the manufacturer's brand? And it's probably the latter. So in the short term, is it a great strategy to increase your sales? Yes. But over time, everyone will be forced to do it, and it's just a way of transferring value from the manufacturer's brand to the host platform, which is Amazon.
So it's kind of a smart way, using the backdoor to extract some profits from the platform.
100%.
And there's short-term opportunity, but not necessarily on the long term. It will pay off for the brands.
Probably on the whole, brands will look back and think that, wish that Amazon had never formed a media group.
Yeah. My last point is, you are talking about breaking up big tech, and
yep.
I'm actually a big fan because I see all the downsides of this.
Yep.
However, I have some general question marks. First of all, whether it's viable from a legal point of view,
yep.
is it possible?
Yep.
And second, is it actually the most effective way to weaken these companies?
Yep.
And if we think about the whole big picture, I see Google and Facebook like paying us with some very thin services. They use this service as a currency, but kind of as a Trojan horse. They then make money with the data
stuff.
you give to them.
Yeah.
So and there's all these privacy concerns also.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be also an effective way to make them pay for the data so that the users sell
mm-hmm.
data points? I mean, we have all the technology around. There's blockchain,
mm-hmm.
there's
mm-hmm.
everything to make this happen. Shouldn't we just reverse ownership of data and
sure.
make them pay?
Sure. So the first question is, legally, how do we do it? And it's a good point because current antitrust law is based on a consumer test, and that is if it's good for the consumer, then we leave it alone. So there's nothing inherently wrong with being big as long as it's good for the consumer. And a lot of people would say that it'd be difficult to show that Amazon hasn't been good for the consumer. Now, I would argue that one, we don't know what we're missing, because it is very hard to start an e-commerce company right now because nobody wants to fund anything that might compete with Amazon. So we don't know what we're missing. I actually think there'd be more innovation in the e-commerce community if Amazon wasn't as powerful.
The only business model is sell to Amazon,
That's
Google,
it.
and Facebook.
And yeah, every venture capital pitch is the same thing. We don't compete with Amazon, Apple, Facebook, or Google, but we'd be great acquisitions. Companies are being started hoping to be acquired. Now, there's talk that the law might be changed to what they call sort of a more neo-Brandesian viewpoint, and that is, first off, let's ask, who is the consumer? The person using Instagram or the advertiser? And the advertiser is suffering because there's fewer and fewer options online to drive traffic. And also, is channel power or abuse or monopoly power reason to break companies up? So in the US, Apple Music has been growing faster than Spotify. Spotify is a superior service. But Apple, because they own the platform, can extract a 30% tax from Spotify, be late sending them tools. Google has 93% share. Very hard to compete with that. Amazon now has capital that's so cheap that almost nobody can compete with them. So the question is, should there be different metrics? A Yale Law School graduate, Lena Khan, who's now at the FTC, says that we need a new test, kind of a channel or a market power test, as opposed to the consumer test. And it's a very interesting question for America where we've bucketed our citizenry into three buckets: consumers, investors, and workers. And we rank them, we prioritize them in that order. The consumer is the nobility, the shareholder is the aristocracy, and the worker is the common man or woman. And there's some question around, well, is that the right way to go? Now, your notion around the best way to I don't even want to say weaken them, because I don't think the objective is to weaken them. I think the objective is to make a more robust ecosystem. The notion of some sort of data tax that you're proposing is an interesting idea. The hard part is you start to define data, what gets taxed, what doesn't, and whether or not, who would monitor it. And my bet is that they are smarter than the regulators who would be monitoring them, and they would figure out a way to make it more expensive for the smaller guys. So GDPR, I think, has hurt mid-sized media companies more than it's hit the big guys, because the big guys have the lawyers and the resources to deal with it. But it's absolutely something we should look at. I'm not a regulation guy, I'm an antitrust guy. I think the best way to reduce Google's search share is to break them up from YouTube, because I believe in the first strategy session post-breakup, YouTube decides to launch text-based search and goes after Google. The best way to provide competition to Google is to let YouTube loose on them, because right now they're cooperating and coordinating.
Sharing data.
And sharing data. YouTube and Google should be competitors, not partners. Same way with Instagram and Facebook.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.